So it's the second to last day of the spring turkey season here in California. Last day for me. I'm about ready to wrap things up, but I figured before I did so, while I'm still out here in this beautiful forested environment here, the habitat of the wild turkey, that I would go ahead and put together a little video on some of the calls that I use to call to these birds. So I'll go ahead and get started with what we call locator calls. Now, a locator call is essentially going to be something that makes a loud sound vocalization that's going to evoke a gobble out of a turkey. In the spring, the gobblers have got testosterone going on. They're all wound up, ready to breed hens, and they're a little excitable. And so you can evoke what we call a shock gobble. And that's where just a loud noise startles that tom, and he just gobbles without even being able to help himself. And, it's a great technique for locating the turkeys on the roost, and even up into the day. I've used various locator calls to locate turkeys in the middle of the day. Get set up, set your decoy up, get all set up, and then call those birds in with confidence, knowing that the birds are there. So there's basically two types of locator calls. The first is going to be the non-turkey vocalizations. My personal favorite is a crow call. And when I use a crow call, I kind of like to gargle into it, so it sounds kind of like this. Or you can just use it without gargling or kind of mix it. The gargling sound tends to mimic mature crows fighting, and so it's more likely to evoke a shock gobble, especially when you get up into the day. Out here in California, turkeys don't respond generally that well to owls. Some people have good results with an owl hooter, but the two go-to non-turkey vocalization, shock gobble invoking locator calls that I like to use are the crow call and then also the coyote. You can use a 2-reed diaphragm to howl on to do a coyote howl. I happen to leave mine at home today, but I've got this Primos peacock coyote imitation here. The peacock is another option too. It's just a loud sound. I've been able to get toms to shock gobble off the roost with the peacock too. So I'll give you both. Go ahead and start with the peacock. And then you can also use this as a howl. I've got a friend, Keith Swope, who does a great howl with this. I'm not quite as good. I prefer the diaphragm call for howling, but here we go, a couple barks and a howl. It's probably a little higher pitched than what's realistic, but it's just the noise and that high pitch that gets the toms to gobble. So the second class of locator calls are going to be turkey vocalizations. And when you're getting up into the day, a lot of times toms won't necessarily respond to a crow call or even a coyote call, and so sometimes you have to use a loud, high-pitched turkey call to get them to gobble. The only problem with that is that they are quite possibly could be coming to the call, when you get that gobble. So I generally like to start with the non-turkey locators and then go to the turkey locator. So start with the turkey specific vocalization. One that typically evokes toms to shock gobble a lot of times is what we call cutting, and a cutting is an excited cluck. It's kind of a cluck on steroids that hens will use when they're really excited, when they're aggravated with another hen. Sometimes when they want a gobbler to get over there and give them some attention. But a cutting is just a sharp, high-pitched cluck like so. And you can mix that in with some loud yelps too, which can evoke a shock gobble, which may or may not get the tom coming to you. Sometimes they'll just gobble at you, and that's kind of not the sound they want to hear, so they just sit there and gobble, and it's for the frustrating part of turkey hunting. But I'll mix some cuts with yelps here. And so that would be an example of a, you know, the other vocalization, of course, would be the gobble. I don't have a gobble call with me, but a lot of times, especially toms are on the roost, you can gobble at the toms and they'll gobble back. You have to be careful of that. One time I gobbled too loudly at a tom and had him kind of fly over the next ridge. You know, he just thought there was a big boss tom in his area that wanted to run him out of town. So you got to be a little careful with the gobble. Also, of course, you could attract other hunters. So it's something you probably want to limit to using to locate turkeys on the roost in the evening. It can be very effective when other calls don't work. So in terms of basic turkey vocalizations, you know, I demonstrated the cut and the yelp. Go ahead and demonstrate the yelp again with the box call here. So you know, yelp is kind of the high-low. It's the basic kind of turkey. You know, it can mean a variety of things in the context. It's, you know, a basic vocalization, gobblers, hens, immature toms, jakes. You know, all turkeys, you know, use the yelp at some point. But it's basically a high-low. So here's a yelp slowed down, so you can kind of hear that transition from high to low. So I'll go ahead and speed that up into a set of hen yelps. And so that basic, you know, 3, 4, 5, even 7 yelps, that's what we call a plain yelp, and that's just kind of a hen saying, hey, I'm over here. Now, a longer sequence of yelps is what we call an assembly yelp, and that's going to be, you know, up to 20 yelps in sequence. Assembly or lost yelp, because it's a call that turkeys will do when they're trying to regroup. You know, you scatter a flock, and you know they're in the fall. They're going to go ahead and use that vocalization to kind of regroup. You know, typically one hen is going to start yelping like that, and all the other turkeys in the group are going to try to find her and group up. You know, it's for the assembly yelp or lost yelp. A second type of yelp is going to be the what we call the excited yelp, and that's typically combined with cuts. So we'll do a couple of cuts here. It's a little faster paced, a little faster cadence there, and that's a call that you'll commonly, when a hen's starting to get aggravated with another hen, that she'll use. You know, also excited cutting. I should throw that in there. That's when a hen is kind of upset with another hen or wants a gobbler to get her over there. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, they're typically going to combine some yelps into that sequence. So typically, your yelps and your cuts go together. So I'll talk about another vocalization now. You know, I alluded to earlier, and that's the cluck. And a cluck is just kind of a turkey saying, "Hey, where are you at?" And a cluck is just similar to a cut, but not as intense. A little lower volume, so like so. And typically, you're going to have a second or two between clucks. There's another vocalization I should mention called putt, and that's an alarm putt. It's similar to a cluck, but louder. And that's something that turkeys are going to give when a predator comes around, or you bump them. You're going to hear them running away, and you're going to hear putt, 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 putt. You know, it's kind of like usually a little faster sequence, a little louder. You know, it's similar to a cut, but a little more of a hollow sound. So anyway, I just demonstrated a box call here. So for our next vocalization, I'm going to break out a mouth call, diaphragm. Diaphragm calls are, well, I should mention the box calls are probably the easiest calls to use. Diaphragm calls are probably the hardest. You know, they've got the steepest learning curve, but they're the most versatile. They're very compact. You can run them hands-free when you're holding that gun, waiting for that big tom to come into range. So I'm going to demonstrate another vocalization here called the purr, and the purr is used by turkeys. It's really a feeding call. They use it when they're trying to make space. There's kind of a contented purr when turkeys are just feeding along, and then there's an aggressive purr when turkeys are angry. If you have turkeys in your neighborhood and they're chasing you down, you know, the jakes or the toms are, a lot of times you'll hear this aggressive purr. Comes out when turkeys fight each other. But I'll go ahead and start with the contented purr. So contented purr, you know, it's a lower key noise, typically combined with clucks, kind of like this. So yeah, my reeds are sticking together a little bit there, but yeah, so, you know, cluck and purr. Also, you know, some soft yelps, and some little whines, feeding whines like so, for a contented feeding type purr. And so that's kind of the purr for you, the contented version. Here's the aggressive version. You know, like two Jakes or two Toms are kind of going at it. Let's see. Didn't do the best job there. My allergies are kind of kicking in, so probably a little more nasal. Didn't get a good a roll as I could have, you know, fluttering my tongue that way. But the aggressive purr can be used to bring turkeys in to investigate when other calls, you know, fail. You know, they say all animals like to come to a fight. So another call, probably the easiest call to make purrs on, is actually going to be a pot call. This is a third type of call I haven't demonstrated yet, but a pot call or a slate call is going to